Okay, we've just heard from the Mercedes AMG Petronas Formula One team. We're now going to sort of stick with transport as a theme, slightly slower, but actually pretty damn speedy. It's a real pleasure to welcome John Trenchard, Vice President, Sustainable International Supply Chains, Europe region, for DP World, the international logistics company, talking about the fact that sustainable logistics isn't just good for the planet, it drives profitability and resilience. Maybe not quite at the same speed as Mercedes, but boy, does it drive it. John, if I can hand over to you.
Yes, thank you. Cheers. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and very interesting to hear the previous speaker who was talking about Mercedes. DP World is the logistics partner for McLaren. So it's okay, we've got the right colour behind us, we've got the papaya, so that's on brand. It's very humbling to be here, actually, as someone who's new to the sustainability space. Many of you guys in the auditoriums here and having discussions, you're all sustainability professionals or a lot of experience in the sustainability side. I've come from the commercial side. And I've previously been VP for Commercial and Supply Chain in the UK for DP World. And we've come at this now, and we're going to hear for the next 20 minutes or so about some of the products and services that we can do to try and support customers with their Scope 3 emissions and their supply chain issues. So I'm not a sustainability professional. I'm someone who's fallen into this because a large portion of the market in Europe and North America are actually demanding action in this space. So hopefully this works. So sustainability, as you guys know much better than I, is an all-encompassing area. It covers many things: oceans, modern slavery, nature, diversification, our planet, oceans, quite important part of our business as well, being in containerized international shipping and supply chains. But today we're going to focus in and dial in on CO2. Why? Because it's something that our customers are talking about. It's something that we can actually offer a sales proposition to them as well. One thing I must say, to give it just some context, because you'll have all heard who Mercedes is. You might know who McLaren is. DP World, we sponsor the Gulf, and we do a few things. We run the two biggest container terminals in the United Kingdom, Southampton and London Gateway, carrying about 55% of all the containerised traffic, deep water traffic, into the UK and out of the UK. We also have a number of contract logistics locations in the Midlands, and increasingly having some involvement in forwarding. So if it involves moving things around, we've probably touched it. We are a part of a bigger group with 72 ports around the world, and we physically touch 10% of world trade. So we become a kind of aggregator of demand. So you guys know this problem much better than me, but this is something that we talk to our customers about. We have global emissions, something like 60 billion tons a year out there. It's about 3 or 4, it'll be on the third floor, this graph. Supply chains are about 11-12% of that total, of which maritime industry, shipping, is about 2 and 3%. So those ships go much slower than those Formula One vehicles. They've got a lot of momentum on their side, and they're actually quite efficient per ton kilometre. The rest of the supply chain have got about 10%, and the port industry is a very small proportion of this in total. But we have a very important supply chain position because we are linking dry side customers with wet side customers, with commercial deals, with legal deals, and with physical deals. So it's quite important. So your customers, or our customers, are generally importers or exporters, and they've got some carbon targets, and generally looks a bit like this. We've got a baseline year where in 2015 to 2020 someone's come up and calculated what the baseline is. And then you've got a target in 2030 or 2040, 2050 of net zero. Great, super. But we've got an interim target. Usually it's about 50%, and it's somewhere at 2030. Now, when we were doing this back in 2017, it's okay, that was 8 iterations away, or it was longer away. Now in 2025, that's only 5 iterations away. And what we can see is for many of the customers, they've had fantastic Scope 1 and 2 savings. Great, we've changed light bulbs, we've changed our electric supply, we've done all kinds of things, big savings. But does it really matter if you're a UK retailer or a European retailer? Because maybe 92% of your emissions are in your downstream or upstream supply chain. So the challenge is how do we then address this next one with a merging path to how do we do scope 3 emissions? And how do we do them pragmatically? And how do we do them at scale? And that will need to have market interactions, and that will need to have some kind of cooperation between parties in the supply chain. So we're also working in this wider market with consumers, and there is, once again, I'm preaching to the choir, I think, many people here, many customers are prepared to do something a little bit different to pay. They may pay a little bit more for sustainable choices. They may not. But the empirical evidence is decisions are often coming into the decision in terms of making a decision as a tiebreaker when there's a choice in the market. And lower carbon solutions are coming. Not all the technology is there, but there is plenty of technology there. The challenge is really, how do we have lower carbon solutions? How do we make sustainability more economically sustainable? So we've got a few options here in terms of what's going on in the port market. Now, we've heard a lot of words about ecosystems. This is the port ecosystem that we have in the UK and across all of our markets, in fact, where we're linking customers, beneficial cargo owners, forwarders, regulators, trucking companies, rail companies, shipping companies, all kinds of people in this space. And it's a position of great responsibility. And we have to think about how, and privilege, and how we can use that position to provide real-world solutions to our customers. So for those of you who are not as passionate about containerized shipping as I am, this is what it looks like. Basically, a ship comes in from Asia carrying various cargo. It gets discharged in our port. It gets stored. We move things around with some really exciting bits of kit. You should come and see it sometime. It's fantastic. And then it goes onto trucks and trains and gets delivered into national distribution centres and then onto the shops. And then you see this. And the same in reverse. So the big ships that are carrying these goods halfway around the planet, they're quite efficient. Their scope 1 and 2 emissions are the big shipping lines emissions. The emissions for the ports, that's us, there are scope 1 and 2 emissions, and the emissions for the trucking companies and the train companies and delivering this, that's their emissions. And as you all know, if you own that cargo and it's your cargo back through the supply chain, scope 3, it's your scope 3 emissions, and there's various different classifications of those scope 3 emissions. So what are we doing about it? So cut to the chase. First thing to do is that we are reducing the carbon emissions from our own operations, and we're spending a lot of time getting to operational net zero. At Southampton, we are on course to be operational net zero certified for 2025. London Gateway, we're not there yet because we've got electrons, we've converted to electricity, but the electrons are coming from a gas-fired power station just around the corner, and we are looking to try and get ourselves onto green electricity, something that we're working on. Next thing we can do, okay, so that's our own area. Next thing we can do, we can start thinking about leveraging our position in the supply chain. So in September 2023, we launched the Carbon Inset Programme, where we paid incentives to the market to move from road to rail as part of the solution. We didn't know if this was going to work. We basically charge £10 for every box that's coming into the UK through our ports, and we pay a £70 incentive to those containers that use rail within 140 miles of the ports in Southampton. So what happened? We have moved 125,000 truck moves, incremental, over and above the baseline, from road to railroad combinations. We've reduced 30,000 tonnes of CO2. It's not our CO2, it's our customers' CO2, but we've had an influence in doing it. And just to give you a scale of this, every container that we get from a Birmingham delivery from London Gateway or Southampton to road rail instead of road is about a quarter of a tonne, 250 kilos of CO2 saved. We've taken over 10 million truck miles off the A34, the M27, the M3, and the M271, which are very, very congested parts of the UK motorway network. And we've moved the share of rail from 21% up to 29%. Some months we're hitting 30, 31%. Tangible, fairly basic. It doesn't get much more basic than this. If you do this, you get this. But we tested to see if it could work. So we started a carbon inset program at the start of this year where every single import container that comes through the port receives some carbon insets if you bring your cargo through the port. And we set it initially at 50 kilos, which was approximately the same as the ship's emissions alongside at the port. We've since increased that to 250 kilos of carbon inset credits. And those carbon inset credits are basically equivalent to the pilot station, which is where the ship arrives near the UK coast, the navigation into our port, alongside the navigation back out again, and that basically addresses the emissions for that part of the supply chain. We think that we can see about 40,000 tonnes of CO2 impacted in this, and since we started this on the 1st of January, we've had over 200,000 containers worth of cargo on an annualised basis sign up for this. So this was a bit of a punt. It started now, and people are starting to use these inset credits to address their supply chain emissions. Just to point on this, we are creating these carbon insets by putting incrementally lower carbon fuel into shipping vessels, container vessels, in the North European area where we can be very, very sure on certification and operation. There are our own vessels. And then we're basically tokenizing these and then allowing these tokens then to go to the customers so that we can break it up. And this is what I'm talking about, using this aggregation of demand as a possibility to do this. So the forgotten people in this have unfortunately been our trucking community. We've got over 4,500 trucks visiting our two ports on a daily basis. That's a lot of trucks. So what we've started and we've just announced is DP World's low carbon truck program, where we're trying to support the trucking industry, the container trucking industry, moving from using dinosaur juice, basically diesel for their trucks, and moving some way towards achieving lower carbon solutions. Eventually, it's probably EV, and that's where we're aiming for. But as a kind of interim step, we're looking at using hydrotreated vegetable oil, HVO. So we've launched it. We've got over 48 customers pre-registered, or trucking companies pre-registered for this today. We believe, and how it works is, for every truck that comes more than 90 times into our port during a 3-month period, we will give the haulier 5,000 litres, up to 5,000 litres of HVO fuel for the price of diesel. So the haulier doesn't have any change on his cost base. He still has the same cost as diesel. But that HVO, hydrotreated vegetable oil, has got up to 85% less carbon than regular diesel. Now, those of you in the audience may say, well, HVO, there's a few issues with that. Yes, there are. We have to be very, very careful. It has to be responsibly sourced. We need to know that certification is all right. And we're working with partners, two very strong partners in the fuel industry to make sure that's there. But this is an interim step. We need to get those small and medium-sized companies who are maybe operating 10, 15, 20 trucks and do not have unlimited capital to start paying £300,000 for an electric vehicle when they've previously been spending £100,000 a vehicle. We need to help them on that journey. So this is an interim step on the way. We anticipate that something between 500 and 700 trucks will qualify for this program. So we're not talking about trialling things with one or two. We're talking about really moving the market and making a difference with this program. If you take the HVO at the tank and you get a bulk delivery, it's 5,000 litres for every truck. If you take it at the pump, It's 3,000 litres for the at the pump. And we've framed it as a trial because, quite frankly, we need to work out how this is going to work, and we may have to modify this over time. And once again, the addressable market for this is about 30,000 tonnes of CO2. And we've got lots of our other ports around the world looking at this. We operate 72 ports. Can we actually do this in other locations over time? And the goal is to get to 100% electric. As DP World, we operate electric vehicles in our fleet already, and we're working to try and scale that and learn from that and share the learnings on how that works. And we're using electric vehicles in various different places, including working on various different contract logistics solutions in Germany and in the UK. So you can see that we've done something with our own operations. We've done something on the wet bit to help people on the wet bit. We've done something on the dry bit with trucks, and then with the trains to try and nudge behaviours going through. One other area which is quite interesting is supply chain of reefer or temperature control goods. We import a lot of food. About a third of the food that comes into the UK is coming over the quay in containers. If you set hard frozen cargo, the standard hard frozen cargo set point temperature is minus 18 degrees. The reason why it's minus 18 degrees is it happens at degrees centigrade. It happens to be 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Technically, much of this cargo can actually be shipped at minus 15 degrees. And actually, there's quite some savings if you could do this across the supply chain. So 18 degrees is a legacy. At 15 degrees, there's no food impact biologically in what's going on. If we could manage to navigate this change over time, there is a big dividend here. Something like 17 million tonnes of CO2 could be saved just by setting the appropriate temperature, and we'd be able to save some cost here in terms of energy usage as well. That's one that we're starting to have some interactions with. So all of this here is an attempt to try and use this position of privilege in the supply chain to try and make nudges and offer our customers lower carbon choices. In the trucking program, and I'm speaking at the Road Haulage Forum for Future Road Haulage Forum on Thursday, we're actually supplying carbon literacy training as a prerequisite for joining the program. So in order to qualify for that fuel that we're subsidising, you need to send at least one, and you can have up to 3 people onto a day's face-to-face carbon literacy project certified course, and these guys will then get carbon literacy certified. And we've been working with the content with both Carbon Literacy Project, and we've also been working with the Smart Freight Centre to try and make sure that we've got this so it can be replicated and done in other markets. How are we paying for this? This is important. We have something called an energy transition contribution. It's a levy. We charge it on every single box that comes into the UK. And you as consumers, you're paying for it. So thank you very much. But just to put it into context, the sea freight 3 or 4 years ago from Asia, from Shanghai, is something, it went up to something like $20,000 a box, a container. 20 tons of cargo coming from Shanghai. Today, those rates are much lower. They're maybe $3,000 or $4,000 a container. We're talking about a charge currently of about £15 a container. £15 per container divided by 16,000 running shoes, which you fit in a container, works out to 0.000000001 of a pair of running shoes. And that's what it's taking to do this. We will be increasing the energy transition contribution when we come to the start of the new year, and that will increase quite substantially because we're paying for all of these programs, and that will go up towards something like £30 a box. And I'm afraid that is the cost of doing this kind of adventure for our customers. So, Thank you very much indeed for listening in, and I can see there's even people standing at the back. I can't believe it. We're not as exciting as Formula One motor racing, but we've definitely got more momentum. We are trying to give low carbon choices to our customers, and there's a lot of calculation in this area. There's lots of trying to do the right things. We are doing trials. We are seeing, can we drive behaviour? We're measuring against a benchmark, and we're looking to see if we can use the UK as a springboard to try and do this further afield and do this in other markets as well. And this is just a few of the examples which are pragmatically available there for those who are doing supply chains on an international basis. Thank you very much for your time. Cheers. Thank you.